The lining chosen, marked out and cut out, marked with the tailor tacks. Now we move on to choosing what we're going to have, whether we're going to have lacing, panels, modesty panels, busks that do up. This is an old corset I made about 8 years ago, and it's quite a heavy duty one with steel spiral boning, metal busk, metal eyelets, steel and lacing, made from coutil, very hard wearing, with a Petersham edging and swaying. This is another lightweight corset, more of an experimental corset which I sewed eyelets on and used cable ties, zip ties as the boning, which kept it nice and light, and added straps with the waistband. This is the zip tie, cable tie. And this is the spiral steel boning I use for the heavy duty corset. And another type of boning you can use is reed, which I use for my 1790 corset I made from Jill Salen's book. I'll show that in a little while. This is an experimental bustier I made using grosgrain for the edging, and I also use the reed boning for that. This is the 1790 pattern corset, and just showing how I used anything really for lacing, and I sewed the eyelets on that, but you can use eyelets already pre-made. This is old footage, so forgive me. It's going back to when I made the heavy duty corset and how I made the eyelets. Just inserting the rings there, lining it up after using the owl to make the holes, which I enlarged with pliers. This keeps it all in line before you use pressure. I used a hammer. I experimented with ribbon, but that's not very good. This is what you would normally do at the edge of the corset is you would true it, make sure it all lines up when you sew it together, but I'm doing something different which I'll show eventually. You must have a 90 degrees, otherwise you get a point at the seam which you can see here. So I'm just edging it off. These are all the panels for the lining, just pinned together. I had a great deal of trouble sewing the fabric, the main fabric, which I'll show in a little while. New sewing machines don't seem to cope well with tricky, thicker or patterned fabric these days. So this lining is just a satin type lining. As you can see just there, the bottom edge doesn't line up, but again we'll come to that eventually. This is what I mean about trying to sew the main patterned, raised patterned fabric. So I tried with my broken fingers to hand sew it, but that was just wishful thinking. So I got out my trusty older fab, and once it was set up, which took about an hour because it is an old machine, it fairly flew. It was able to get through the raised pattern and all the extra bits and pieces on the main fabric, which my new machine really struggled with. This particular machine I've used to sew leather with. It's an incredible piece of engineering. And just carried on for both sides, making the lining and the main fabric panels. When you connect the lining to the main fabric, you sew down the seams, usually using a running stitch, but as long as they're sewn down, that's okay. Keeps it all in line for when you put the boning in either side of the seam. Stops shifting about. These are the cable ties which you fit between the seams of the inner lining and the outer main fabric, and then you pin it down the sides. You would take the zip ties out, leaving the pins in. This is how I found, and then sew down to create the channels, which I'll show in the next video.